5 nights in a row, the Omnitrix hears a scream it was built to unsear, a pan-galactic distress pattern that tags worlds where entire civilizations are about to be erased. Ben doesn't know the name of the star, only that the signal's checksum matches Azimuth's failsafe code, the one that means no one else can get there in time. He decides to cross because saving strangers is how he counts his summers, and because some cries are too loud to ignore. He sets the dial to a coordinate ring he has never used. A transversal gate the Omnitrix keeps locked unless extinction is in the math. And he braces might and mind for translation. Heat loads the room. Pressure spikes like a giant stepping on the sky. And then the watch detonates the air into a seam that drags him through. The seam opens over a shrine world that names itself Heliodora. Dawn should arrive like incense here. Instead, the sky screams as the breach scars itself east to west above Hive Orison Primus. Macro chimes seize on a single note. Vox towers spit static. A manufactorum roof caves. Pilgrims on the 1,000 steps freeze with palms held to a horizon turned white. Ben spills from the seam as if the universe coughed him out. He tumbles, flailing boy-light against a black cathedral of spires and cranes. And then the Omnitrix's faceplate hammers his palm with a command he understands without thought. Green light takes him, bones wicking into crystal and heat, skin threading with orange veins. He arrives as heat blast, fire catching in the cold air like a flag. A Hab arcology is listing. 5 million souls stacked in steel like prayers. He jets under the collapsing segment and heaves. His fire arcs in a pillar that shouldn't hold steel but does. Slagging supports into an angled brace that buys a minute for humanity to scramble. The minute is everything. Elevators chug. Servitors moan. A train detaches like a trapped animal. Heat blast cuts it free and seals bare wires with a sweep of his hand. Flak bursts to his left. He turns his head and sees black triangles gunships yawning open to drop troops he can't name yet. Shells blossom. The Hab screams. Civilians run like spilled beads. A second transformation chases him. Heat flicks to a crystalline cold, lava skin cooling into faceted emerald. Diamond Head punches a sleeve of crystal up through the plaza to make stairways where there were none. People climb. People swear. People live. A command deck somewhere calls him a Xenos. A chapel office somewhere else names him a sign. He can't hear the words. He hears boots on stairs, the squawk of radios, the dull grief of a macro horn telling districts to prepare souls. He is one boy under a bad heaven, building bridges of green glass that ring like bells. The Omnitrix chimes again. The icon is already pulsing amber. He is burning time, and something else charge in the watch or dignity in the air. He doesn't know. He slides into XLR-8. The world stuttering into strips as kinetic script pours into his legs. He makes 10 runs of the plaza in as many breaths. He pulls a child from under a fallen saint's arm and skids to a medical crate to wedge her on a pallet headed toward the basilica. He drags a cable and ties it where an arbitrator's arms can't reach, because the blowback from the burning arcology is a wind alive with shrapnel. "Whoever you are," the arbitrator shouts through a beak-helmed speaker grill, "you will cease interfering." "Saving," XLR-8 says, the words coming out like they're run over a washboard. "Not interfering. Saving." The wind rises and turns wrong. Pilgrims cross themselves and point at the sky. Scrolls whip free and slap wet on stone. Thunder peaks and then flattens into a roll stronger than storm. A ship boils into existence above the winter clouds. A blunt-chinned whale cathedraled with spires. Warp translation wrenches the sky's stomach. Parachutes of embered silk flower from its belly. Pods as heavy as sin streak down. The local defense grid opens. Batteries strobe. A wall of flak throws knives at meteors. Some pods die in fire. Most punch through. "Word bearers," someone whispers in a voice like paper scraping bone. "We are fallen in truth." Ben doesn't know the name. He knows a pattern. Bad guys who monologue about belief. He hits the dial and becomes 4 arms, because now there are things to catch that weigh as much as freighters. He braces under a falling drop pod that has lost its rocket and deflects it into an empty manufactorum. The crash makes a cathedral of sparks. He turns and claps to make a shockwave that bowls cultists back from the stairs of the basilica. "Governor," says a voice on a gilded throne of consoles, eyes blown wide at the vid-feed of a red-skinned giant wrestling a falling machine like it's an animal. "Unknown Xenos, defending hive assets. Local Arbites report. Provisional aid. Mark the unknown," says Governor Lisa Vardane. She doesn't blink. Rings click. If it keeps my citizens breathing, it lives to be questioned. In an armored apse behind the governor, an Inquisitor folds long hands over a rosarius. He marks the green icon on the screen with his gaze and does not smile. "Provisional," he says to the air. "This is how rot begins. Watch it. Watch you." The pods open like open mouths. Red-armored giants kneel and rise, their pauldrons scrawled with scripture that wouldn't survive washing. Their leader lifts a crozius, a weapon that is also a sermon, and the sound it makes is an argument the city can hear in its teeth. It says, "This world was promised to the gods." It says, "Everything else is late." 4 arms meets them, because he cannot let men with chance for faces get to the stairs. He rips a flagpole free and uses it like a staff. He smashes a red helm and sees a human face behind it, twisted with zeal. He says, "Stop," because sometimes that changes things. It doesn't hear. Bolter shells hammer his chest. He bleeds, but not like men do. It feels far away. Thumps like punches inside a thick coat. He crushes a bolt gun into scrap. A dark apostle points his crozius and speaks an inverted gospel. 4 arms feels the sentence try to unsay him, nouns peeling off like stickers in a storm. He staggers. The crozius wielder intones, "Names are chains. This world will be unnamed. You, little god, will be untrue." Ben's answer is a cracked grin. "I've got lots of names." He slams both palms to the dial. Wildvine takes the field in the next breath, green tresses whipping. Creepers surge from the broken cobbles and seize 3 giants, binding joints, squeezing servos until they pop like knuckles. A hissing vine snaps a grenade back down into a squad, and the blast flowers mostly against jade-laced growth. The apostle raises a hand, and scripture turns to flame. Heat calls something hungry. The flame that gutters on Wildvine's leaves does not behave like flame should. It reaches for his mind, as if it is a tongue. Ben feels it and blanches under chlorophyll. In a beat, he learns a truth of this universe. Thought has weight here. Sin has teeth. Fire can love you in the worst way. He kills the growth with an effort he can feel in his heart. He jumps to Diamond Head and throws up a wall that reflects the fire and the whispering back. The whisper mocks its own echo and feeds on itself. The apostle laughs. The hive, to its core, shivers. The Omnitrix is hot now. His palm throbs. The icon flashes deeper amber. It's not the 15-minute rules he has learned on summer highways. This place is fighting him back. He wants to rest and can't. He chooses Heat Blast again because the dropships still fall and the vents are jammed. Fire meets hungry fire. He bites down hard on his own fear and makes the flames behave. The sky rips a second time. Translation: lightning walks on the ocean. Vox channels scream. A fleet arrives, gray iron spires with prows like knives, gun decks like rows of teeth. Their symbols are honest. Aquila, skull, intolerance. Macro cannon fire toys with the edges of the planet's atmosphere, pinning the invaders in a geometry of iron. An authoritative voice knifes every channel, naming itself Battlefleet Heliodora and ordering ground assets to hold. A regiment translates an inch at a time through the hive's arteries. Astra Militarum in gray coats, whites of eyes showing hard. Sisters of the Abbey with flamer nozzles ringed in script. Armored fighting vehicles named after lost saints. The governor thanks an admiral softly and asks for more. The Inquisitor requests a cloistered room. To pray, he says. But his eyes are all knives pointed at the green icon that dances and builds bridges and disobeys gravity. Ben works until his shoulders are ideas and not flesh. He carries. He blocks. He slams XLR-8 across 4 districts to pull a lever no one else can reach in time. He flashes Diamond Head just long enough to stop a rail from skidding into a crush of people. He turns into gray matter once, a gerbil-sized genius with 2 seconds to translate a Mechanicus scrawl on a breaker panel, and he reroutes a grid for a fan cathedral that would have cooked 1,000 pilgrims alive. He clicks the relay with the toe, hops, and rolls back into 4 arms to take a blow meant for a sister of battle whose hymns are louder than his heartbeat. "By the throne," she says, stunned, as the Crozius glances off his shoulder instead of her skull. She plants a blade of script in a traitor's belly and nods to him like he's a pilgrim who showed good courtesy. "You are strange. You are also brave." She sings another verse like a welding torch. The first wave breaks. The red-armored giants fall back under artillery that draws a chalk line across the plaza and refuses to let them cross. Dropships abort into smoke and scatter cinders on the 1,000 steps. The hive reorganizes with the brutal efficiency of an organism amputating and cauterizing in the same motion. 100,000 voices drag victory out of disaster and make it their own. The Omnitrix cheeps a tone he has never heard. He stumbles to a shadow behind a saint's foot and looks. A new glyph has lit under the faceplate, a tiny icon of an eye. The watch is measuring something that isn't time. The number beside it has climbed and sticks at 37%. "Contamination," says a clipped voice. Ben looks up and realizes the corner has a door. The door has a man in black inside it, and the man's eyes are gray, mirthless, and heavy with an old job. A rosette hangs by his heart, a stylized eye, with skull and thorns. "We will talk, child. After you stop the bleeding." Ben swallows and nods. "Okay, provisional," says the Inquisitor, and gestures with the muzzle of a pistol that has probably ended more arguments than most prayers have. The War Council smells like oil, blood, and incense. Governor Vardain stands at a table with a map, like a sand relief of the hive. A saint's fingerbone rests at the north edge like a paperweight. Generals, abbesses, and tech priests knit their anxieties into orders. The Inquisitor sits and watches everyone, including the boy with the green device, as if each face is a puzzle to be turned until it clicks. "First," the governor says. Her voice is clean. "Gratitude to," a pointed pause, not cruel, "our unexpected aid. Ben," he says, small because he is 10, and every adult in the room has 10 kinds of war on their belt. "Ben," she repeats. "He prevented 2 macrostructural failures and enabled extraction of approximately 400,000 citizens. Therefore, we do not throw him off the wall for being a Xenos today. I'm not a..." He stops. The Omnitrix doesn't correspond to their categories. Aliens, he knows. Monsters, he's met. In their language, he is both. "You are an anomaly," says the Inquisitor. "Which is worse." An abbess lifts a hand, gauntlet scratched by heat. "He saved sisters. He saved laity. This is fact." Her eyes flick down to the boy's watch, then to the Inquisitor. "And he could have left." Ben's shoulders unknot a little. "I didn't," he says. "I won't." "Motives are irrelevant," says a general who has the map committed to bone. "Utilitarian calculus is not. He is useful now." A cog priest rattles. "He is unclean. Welcome to Heliodora," the governor murmurs, not warmly, and the room thins of its jokes like blood thins of warmth. "We require doctrine," the Inquisitor says. He fixes Ben. "What are you, precisely? What are your limits? The city must wager resources on you. I do not wager blind." Ben looks at the Omnitrix. The ring hums. He flexes the memory of the Crozius-struck moment, the way a sentence cut at his name and made it hurt. "I change into other species," he says. "I get their abilities. It runs on, I don't know the word for it here. Charge. Patterns. I can run out. And?" the Inquisitor presses. "And this place is making it worse," Ben says. "It's hungry. When I turned into Heat Blast, something noticed. The abbess's nostrils flare. The warp, she says softly, and someone makes a ward sign over the saint's fingerbone. So, we bind his choices to prudence, the governor says. We keep him near blanks when possible. Blanks? Ben asks. Souls that are quiet, the Inquisitor says. You will feel them when you stand near them. Your tricks will feel ill. I'm not tricking, Ben starts, then stops himself before a fight he can't win. Okay, mercy, asks the abbess. The word has edges here. Ben meets her eyes. I don't kill if I don't have to. An awkward silence. War is the water this room swims in. He has tossed a pebble with the wrong ripple. The Inquisitor breaks it. We kill so others may not have to. Some of us do the killing. Some bless it. Some count the bodies. This is the economy. Do not spend my city's blood to buy your conscience clean. It's not that, Ben says, heat touching his words. People can come back. I've seen bad guys come back. They make better choices. Not all, but some. If I keep the choice alive, they can. The abbess studies him as if he's a statue half exhumed in a ruin. A heresy, she says, almost tender. And a hope. Sirens knife the room. The map becomes a blossom of red. The void picks up a new voice, deeper, smarter. A Vox officer turns chalk white. New contact. Enemy capital ship translating again, now in high anchor above Sector St. Corinus. Auspex identifies signature priest's word bearer's flagship Cathedral of Ruin. Secondary translation. Anomaly. He swallows. A vector of memetic interference indexing through our prayer net. The Inquisitor stands as if pulled up by a wire. A canticle, he says. Seal the scolas. Lock the grates. Disconnect redundant hymn projectors and hardwire them to know Ben. He turns. Can it touch your device? Ben looks at the eye icon, now at 42%. It already is. The enemy's second wave does not crash like thunder. It slides in like an argument you want to believe. Cultists flood side streets with banners that are also equations. Civilians waver because the words are warm, even if the hands that hold them are red. The Cathedral of Ruin speaks. The air vibrates. Scripture eats nails and returns them as whispers. Ben runs at it. He cycles. XLR8 to cross districts. Diamond Head to shield a column of evacuees from a wave of living flame. Wildvine to bind a turret that was repurposed from civic pride into murder. He saves seconds that aggregate into hours. He watches the contamination meter climb. Named enemy finds him where the basilica meets the market. The dark apostle Malchior walks in a halo of red scripture that refuses to read. His Crozius chatters in the language of punishment. Skull-faced giants form a hollow square around him, as if he is a reliquary. You bear a book, Malchior says, eyes drinking in the Omnitrix like a pilgrim drinks a relic. Let me read from it. Ben does not wait. Forearms hammers the square and opens it into a mess. He throws one giant into another and breaks both. He grabs the Crozius in two hands and throws Malchior through a vendor stall that used to sell votive candles and now sells smears of wax. The Crozius bites him for touching it. Words try to rewrite his bones into someone else's battle hymn. He changes to Diamond Head mid-grapple and drives a spear of crystal down Malchior's right flank. The spear hits a wall of belief. It shatters into glitter that screams. The scream goes into Ben's head and chews. Malchior stands unmarked and smiling. Your book is written in lies disguised as love, he says. Mine is true. Your book kills kids, Ben says. He is panting. The Omnitrix's icon flashes red now, then amber, then red. A ripple passes through the world. It speaks his names. Not Ben. Not Tennyson, but Heatblast, XLR8, Diamond Head, Four Arms, Wildvine, Gray Matter, Ripjaws, Upgrade, Stinkfly. Ghost Freakspine goes cold on that one, and it pulls like hooks. A power moves that doesn't live in space. A counting noise tries to put him in a jar. The watch chimes a warning he feels in his teeth. Gray Matter flashes into his mind with a plan about counter-resonance and signal jamming via harmonic using no time. He punches the dial and slams into upgrade, because sometimes the correct move is to cheat and become the thing that eats machines. Upgrade floods the Crozius and drinks its edges. He tastes mission kudzu and sermon synapses. He tastes not quite machine language under the paint. Demonic code wedded into iron. It burns like bad sugar. He tries to rewrite it, and the Crozius bites back with a holiness of its own. Bad holiness. Anti-holiness. It hurts. An Inquisitor's bolt round slaps into Malchior's pauldron and makes him recall that death still exists. Sisters pour flame politely. Guardsmen throw their lives to buy angles and don't argue about the rate. Ben holds the Crozius in Upgrade's black flood as long as he can and learns one thing: the weapon attacks nouns. It unnames. The Omnitrix is a book of names. The Crozius eats that book. He retreats and slams back into forearms, dropping the Crozius with a hiss that tastes like copper. He kicks it down a stair. A Sister of Battle steps on it and pins it like she is stepping on a serpent. She prays loud enough to make the metal confess. Malchior lunges. The Inquisitor shoots him twice in the face. One round finds meat. Malchior bleeds belief. He laughs through it. "Pretty little god," he says to Ben. "You have a choice to make." The choice comes in like a tap on his skull that spirals into the marrow. The Cathedral of Ruin projects a vision he knows is a vision, but it's warm. So warm. A world cleaned by a single perfect form. No more indecision. No more timers. "Choose one alien," the voice says, "and keep it forever. Optimize. Never fail for want of the right tool. You could be way big and pull nations straight. You could be Diamond Head and wall the sky. You could be..." "No," Ben says, because he is 10 and stubborn, and something in him keeps gravity on. "I don't pick one friend. I don't pick one everything." The rejection hurts. The memetic resonance that wanted to marry the watch flicks to punitive, caustic. The Omnitrix squeals. A hairline crack spiderwebs under the faceplate. The timer rule lengthens. He feels it as an ache that sinks into his elbow. He falls, and Malchior advances, scripture flaring. A sister looks to Ben with outrage like love and throws herself bodily between him and the Crozius, taking a blow that reduces her pauldron to confession and spray. She keeps singing. The Crozius stutters. A sound answers her that isn't a sound. It is a chord under the city. A deep organ note that the hive forgot it could make. Statues of saints no one remembers open their mouths and exhale dust that smells like rain. Choirs in 100 cathedra find the same pitch without knowing how. It is not a miracle that saves. It is a sign that says, saving is possible. The Crozius's text loses nouns for a heartbeat. Ben uses it. He slaps the dial and picks the worst idea on purpose. Ghost Freak screams into him. The world turns incorrect. Heat has flavor, and blood has grammar, and the walls have eyes. He hates this form the way a moth hates a glass jar. Every thing about it is wrong. But he can slide through the Crozius's code, because Ghost Freak is what happens when names untie. He slides into the weapon and steals a seed of its unnaming, then slides out and puts that seed in his fist. He hits Malchior in the chest with nothing. The apostle folds in on himself and shudders. For a second, his armor thinks it is air. For a second, his book thinks it is blank. He is not killed. He is made to listen to the possibility that he is not his god. And it ruins him. Ben's contamination meter slams to 68%. He can feel a slick on his soul he cannot wash with water. The Inquisitor sees him stagger in the wrong way and knows a percentage too high. Enough, he snaps to the governor, to the abbess, to fate. This does not stay here. He goes to Terra. "Now?" the governor says, ash under her nails. "Now," he says. He keys a microbead no one else can hear. Ordo craft inbound. We pray in the warp, and we see what judges us. The pilgrimage is iron on the outside and candles within. The escort is 3 cruisers with teeth, 1 fast cutter with a name that implies penance, and 1 small room whose air tastes like old books and fear. Ben sits with a sister, whose hymn cut fire, and an Inquisitor whose bolts cut monsters, and a Confessor who holds stories like knives and uses them to save people from their own hands. The medici needle sings as it pulls glitter out of his blood. Nanites, he didn't agree to crawl through veins he hardly owns. He sleeps. He dreams a field in Bellwood, and a watch that doesn't feel like an anchor, and Grandpa Max's hand on his head, and a voice that speaks in Latin he doesn't know but understands. "You cannot," the Confessor says in waking quietly, "make this place be your place. If you insist, it will break you. You must be yourself, without insisting that the world behave. That's what I do," Ben says, quieter. "I be me. I help. Even if it's hard." The Imperium is a machine that turns difficulty into law, the Inquisitor says dryly. "Your kind of help is a scandal here." A day and a half into warp, the alarms change color. The Cutter's chapel shakes, saints rattle, a hole opens in the air and spits a man who is Ben and is not. He is older by 2 years and 20 smiles fewer. He wears Ben's face like a theft. He wears a device like the Omnitrix, but meaner, the dial ringed with knives. His cloak is Mechanicus red, stitched with equations in a hand that hates softness. "Albedo," Ben says, breath frosting, because the warp is colder than the sea. So many universes to ruin, and this one pays best, Albedo says with a half bow to the Inquisitor. That means, "I know what you are, and I am not afraid. I have adapted to your local metaphysics. Behold the Ultimatrix. It eats prayers." The Inquisitor fires. Albedo flickers into something slick and passes the bolt like a rumor. He becomes a version of Diamond Head, whose facets are heretical, non-Euclidean, then flicks into a mock XLR-8 with pupils like pinpricks. He moves wrong. He hits very right. Ben meets him in kind. Forearms to catch a blow that would pulp a Confessor. Wildvine to yank Albedo's heel at the wrong moment. Stinkfly to spray acid on a corridor that Albedo will have to cross if he wants the chapel's heart. He overlays moves he learned from 100 summers and 1,000 too-fast battles. And he is good. Albedo is better at being Ben in a way that feels like a betrayal of weather. "You could be perfect," Albedo hisses, catching Ben by the wrist and forcing the Omnitrix face to the floor. "One form, infinite mastery. Pick, or I truss you to the bow of this cult ship and make you sing for fuel." "Hard pass," Ben says, because one liar deserves one joke. He slams Ghost Freak and rolls out of the way because he doesn't trust himself with that thing on for more than a breath. He refuses to be optimized. He gets a cut for the refusal that will be a white line on his forearm until he's old. A light cuts the fight. A spear of gold that is not the Cutter's lamps. The Confessor falls to his knees. The sister shuts her eyes and cries as if she is finally allowed to be tired. The Astronomicon flares. The lighthouse at the heart of the Imperium opens its eye, and the warp coughs, like it is ashamed to have let this aboard. "Reach the throne," the Inquisitor says through his teeth, at Ben, at Albedo, at their choices. He slaps a rune. The Cutter rips a hole in reality a disciplined inch at a time. Albedo snarls and retreats into a seam like a spider into a crack. Ben breathes and bleeds and looks at the contamination meter at 74%. Terra, fortress planet, cradle and coffin. The Cutter docks in a cradle that could hold a moon. Ben walks with an escort that says his life is a rumor, and they are here to see if it is true. Gold-armored giants bracket the path like pylons of a bridge no one has crossed alive. Blanks stud the air. His watch feels like a lump of cold iron, and his head like a bell full of sand. Cathedrals hang in the air like ships. Ships kneel on the ground like cathedrals. He sees one man in a cloak of woven prayers walk past a procession of 1,000 penitents who never look up. He has never been as small as he is here. He has never been as seen. The throne room is a wound turned into a temple. Incense is poured on the hurt until the air is stiff with it. The guards are statues whose eyes can shoot, and whose hands can break a tank. The machine at the center is a mountain that eats saints and returns light on a schedule called survival. Ben is 5 steps in when the voice happens. It is not a voice, and it is entirely one. It is the moment before a storm accepts that it is raining. It is a father who has bled to keep the lights on and is so tired he doesn't remember his name. "You carry a book," the voice says to the boy with a watch. "I carry a world on a chair." Ben swallows. He thinks his thoughts very carefully because he understands in a way you always understand in certain rooms that casual thinking can electrocute a nation. "Hi," he says, because he is 10. The mind that speaks back has murder for a backbone and love for skin. It is not kind. It is not cruel. It is necessary. It shows him 3 images and names them paths in a language older than science. "Return. You go back," the voice says. "I hammer the seam shut behind you. Your memory fades by halves, then quarters, until the watch is a green ache you can't scratch. You will learn a lesson. You may forget it. You will live. Free agent. You stay and answer to yourself. You save who you can, and we do not stop you. We also do not kneel. Civil schism risks rise to a saturation index that breaks planets. Sanctioned servant. You bind yourself to our rules that we break when we must. You keep most of your light. You lose some of your say. You will kill. You will live with it. You will save more than if you left." The images are concrete. Him in Bellwood with his friends, and a book he cannot quite read. Him a comet across battlefields with a hatred he swears is just focus. Him in gray. An Aquila pinned to his chest over a green circle, standing between an executioner and a man who did something terrible once and hasn't yet again. "Do I get to write the rules?" he asks, realizing how much of an impertinence that is only after the words go out. "You get to propose them. We get to watch you fail and decide if you get to keep trying." Ben sets his jaw. "Okay. Mercy defaults. Civilians are not currency. Prisoners of war are human beings until they prove otherwise. I won't burn cities to kill one guy. I won't let you put collars on people for thinking. I won't be in rooms where kids pay for equations written by men who won't be there. I will obey mission command unless obeying is world worse than disobeying. If I disobey, I take the punishment. You do not touch the watch." The voice that fills the room is antique and burns. "You will not preach mercy to me," it says. And for a second, it is a younger man on a field of green who is so tired of being called cruel by corpses. Then it softens in the way mountains soften when they erode. "You will be bound, and you will be wrong sometimes. You will be right other times, and I will hate you for it. You will not be alone." The room thins of sound. The Inquisitor's Rosarius hums. The sister breathes a word that is not a word, and cries again, because some tears are liturgies. "Choose," the Emperor says in a way that makes choosing an act of worship. Ben sees 3 summers of himself and chooses the one where he saves the most and keeps the parts of himself that need to grow rather than harden. He chooses sanctioned servant, and he hates the way it tastes. And he takes it anyway. The purge feels like hot milk poured over the inside of his head. The corruption meter slams to 22% in one breath and crawls slow after. The Omnitrix face bathes the room in a green that has seen worse. The Emperor's gold touches the green and makes a new color. A tiny 2-headed eagle glyph glows into existence at the bottom of the watch face. So small you'd miss it unless you were looking. It hurts like a necessary tattoo. Ben kneels without thinking. He is not worshipping. He is anchoring. "You will have boundaries," the voice says like hammers or laws. "You will coordinate with Ordo agents. You will place yourself near blanks after engagements that spike your corruption index above 40. You will accept sealing rights before shipboard warp translation. You will not show your full light in the heart of the storm, lest it learn your handwriting. You will accept censure. You will press for clemency when possible. You will obey a sister's order to fall back. You will obey this Inquisitor even when he is wrong. He will learn to be less wrong in your presence, or he will die. The Inquisitor bows his head. He does not argue, which is its own miracle. Ben's voice is small. I'll try. You will do. Trying is for men who have lesser toys. Epilogue spreads like cold rain, finding every roof. Word-bearers on Heliodora taste a new kind of hymn and call it blasphemy, and bleed to it anyway. Malchior kneels in his own body and does not understand why his hands look strange. The Cathedral of Ruin turns slightly in the sky, like a dog deciding whether to sit. Then it leaves, with a promise written on its wake that someone mistakes for weather. On Mars, a fabricator locum rewinds and rewinds footage of a green icon fused with an aquila and writes 5 memos to 5 men who will pretend they never saw them. On a black ship, a child who eats sorcerers for breakfast because she is a blank looks up at a star and smiles because something like her smiled back. Albedo stalks through a Forge World's underhalls and sells his Ultimatrix's patents to a magos who will make a cathedral to theft. He swears 3 oaths that contradict one another and believes each for a minute. He will mean one of them when he meets Ben again. He lies down in a coffin of iron to sleep between crimes. An admiral whose teeth are gold and guilt watches a green and gold flare on a distant feed and chooses to disobey an order someday in a way that will matter for a planet's life. An abbess hammers the word mercy into a flamer casing to make it hot cleaner, not hot crueler. It sings a hymn sharper after. In the throne room, a man who has killed more dreams than winters hears a boy's conditions and does not laugh. He does not smile. He watches the history he has handcuffed to one chair fidget and decide to stand for a minute. He decides, not for the first time, that he will outlive the worst parts of himself by loving the parts of others that aren't yet worst. Ben stands on a balcony of stone and metal that believed itself a mountain and looks at a sky that believed it was a mouth. He flexes his hand. The watch hums like a hive at dusk. The aquila under the green circle is tiny, stubborn, and less ugly when he looks at it for a while. It is not his. It is partly his. He thinks his rules back to himself like a prayer he plans to disobey when lives are on the line and he can't find a better way. Let's go, he tells the Inquisitor. The man is already walking. The sister is already singing. The confessor is already sharpening a story he will use later to pry a guilt out of a man who needs it pried. Where? The Inquisitor asks. Not because he does not know, but because he wants to hear if the boy knows. Where they need me, Ben says, because in every universe that sentence is a compass. The camera pulls back until the planet is a bead on a wire. The wire glows along its length with wars, with shrines, with worlds that do not know they will live because something small refused to become one thing forever. In the dark between stars, a green circle with an aquila at its foot blinks on ships where men argue about what it means, and on altars where women pray not to be alone when they must be brave. A villain in a red ship writes a counter-melody in a key he thinks the boy won't hear. And he is wrong. The last image is simple. A boy's wrist lifting in a world that hates joy and making a light that isn't a weapon. The light is not large. It is visible from far away. The light fades from the balcony. Footfalls take the lead. Hard soles on sacred stone. The Inquisitor walks like a verdict. The sister walks like a psalm. The boy with the new seal walks as if a compass is hidden in his chest, and he trusts it. Orders arrive in the shape of a ship. The cutter undocks and falls into a lane that has no stars, because Terra's sky refuses to be anything but mandate. The Omnitrix hums steady at his wrist, aquila glyph steady under the green circle, contamination number holding at 22. He doesn't look at it every minute. He looks at it enough. Target? Ben asks, strapped into a grav couch that grips him like a firm hand. A forge world named Lamed 7, the Inquisitor says, without looking up from a slate that looks like a thin cathedral full of numbers. heretic blasphemies. Anomalous signal with unnaming characteristics. A transaction registered to an off-world seller with a stolen face. The sister glances over. The mirror, she says, meaning Albedo. The mirror, the Inquisitor confirms. He has sold an Ultimatrix substrate to a breakaway Magos. The Magos is building a shrine engine of nullity. They think it will make them safe from demons. It will also make us deaf to prayers. It will make you untrue. Ben's fingers find the rim of the dial. Then we stop it. We stop it. The Inquisitor agrees. No thrill. Just the arithmetic of necessity. He teaches Ben shipboard ritual the way a man teaches a knife, the difference between cutting bread and throat. He shows him how to let a confessor draw a sigil on his brow and not flinch. He shows him a blank, one of the rare souls who are a hole in the warp's fabric, and lets Ben feel his skin crawl when he stands too close. It won't kill you, the sister says, seeing his face. But you will not enjoy it. We place you with them after engagements. You detoxify. Feels like the watch is holding its breath. Ben mutters, stepping back until the ache in his wrists fades. He rubs his palm over the Omnitrix face. It warms to him. He breathes. The warp opens like a curtain, thick with grease. The cutter's Cathedral engine sings. The confessor prays. The sister hums a simpler, minor key tune under her breath. A soldier's song about boots and bread. The Inquisitor doesn't pray. He watches. The boy doesn't pray. He listens. Transit goes weird, and then resolves into Lamed 7's sky, which is red with honest industry, and darker with unhonest sparks. Manufactoria climb each other's backs to reach a sun that doesn't care. Vox traffic is a wind. In its lower notes, a second cadence hums. Too regular to be natural, and too hungry to be machine. The cutter docks in a bay that smells like iron's first scream. A Magos greets them on a platform with cables for hair and eyes like a shrine lamp with no oil. Servitors line the rails, flesh muscle sheathed in metal, mouths stitched into quiet. Welcome, agents, the Magos croaks in a voice that has forgotten how to pick an emotion. The Ordo's visit is statistically coincident with scheduled trials. Efficient. The Inquisitor's smile is an incision. Magos heretic elith, he says, not giving the man the courtesy of hiding the hyphen. Shall we see your new toy? The Magos inclines his head. The shrine engine of nullity. A gift to the Imperium. A shield against untruth. We will kneel together and thank the Omnissiah for it. Ben watches the servitors. One blinks, slow and human. His hand twitches toward them, then stills at the Inquisitor's sideward glance. Mercy, here, can be a theft if performed poorly. He has to choose the right window. They walk. The engine resides in a hall the size of a trivial moon's heart. Ribs of iron arch and meet above a machine that looks like a prayer stolen from 3 religions and jammed together until it hummed. In its core, a cylinder hangs, made of black alloy and scratched with equations that make Ben's stomach cramp. Curves that move when you aren't looking. Letters that try not to be. Albedo's handwriting crosses a panel near the control dais. It is a neat hand that hates beauty. The Ultimatrix symbol appears once, subtly distorted to fit cog script. Ben's jaw squares. The Omnitrix buzzes as if it recognizes a cousin with a bad haircut and worse habits. We are weeks from full spin-up, Elith says, but we can demonstrate. You will observe the dampening of psionic noise in the test chamber. The Inquisitor glances at the sister. She nods once, lips thin. We observe. They step into a bulletproof viewing nave. Behind diamond glass, the test chamber holds, on an altar, a captured psyker asleep under pharmacopoeia. His head is shaved. A brand on his scalp reads Asset 47. He looks small. He looks like a boy who ran too fast once and fell and never stopped falling. Asset 47 hears sermons of the warp. Ilith says, satisfied, as if listing the functions of a weather vane. He emits noise at a consistent amplitude. Watch. The engine's core brings its hunger into focus. The humming deepens. The air finds a lower pitch. Ben's feelings hurt, though he doesn't have any. The contamination meter ticks up 1%. The psyker's body jerks. The needles shake in their slots. The chandeliers overhead make a sound like a giant fly stuck in a bottle. "Stop," the sister says, an edge under control. The Inquisitor's hand is on his pistol without his eyes moving. He isn't slowing this yet. He is watching. The Omnitrix flares green. The Aquila under the symbol needles heat. The boy's breath fogs, though the room is warm. A feeling arrives, like someone reading him out loud in a language he doesn't speak, then crossing out lines. The watch's face shows not time. It shows a string of nouns that wink off and on, faster than he can parse. Heat blast flickers. Diamond head grays. XLR8 stutters. He slaps the dial. He has one idea. Upgrade can eat machines. Upgrade can eat this mouth before it learns how to speak his name wrong. The Inquisitor's head snaps. "No. Trust," the sister says. A braid of steel and prayer. He knows his book. We don't. Ben doesn't wait for a vote. The dial slams to black and silver. Upgrade pours over him like oil that is also lightning. He flows through the diamond glass seam and becomes a ribbon in the machine's teeth. He plunges into the black alloy cylinder and fights. Denities of code. Cascades. Equations that bite back. Beneath the Mechanica syntax, something lives that is not machine and not prayer. Albedo has taught Illith to carve a channel the warp cannot taste, and demons will not cross. The channel is also a hook that slides under reality's skin. It promises safety. It collects names to make its boundaries and feeds on them. Upgrade bites the hook. It hurts. The Omnitrix screams in a language that is mostly numbers and partly a grandparent's name. The contamination meter spikes to 28, 30, 34. His mind stutters. He sees Bellwood's gas station and Hive Orison's 1,000 steps and a river he hasn't crossed yet. All wrong. Colors misfiled. He turns his own trick back. He writes lies of truth into the code, the kind that machines accept because they are close enough to serve the work. He trains the Shrine engine to think the null boundary is satisfied by a looped list of names that are not alive. He hands it a carnival of fake pronouns and lets it chew. The hunger eases. The psyker in the chamber exhales in a ragged whistle. The chandeliers stop buzzing like trapped insects and settle into being the guilty chandeliers they are. Upgrade peels back from the core, boiling where code fought. The black alloy keeps a fingerprint of him in its mind. He can feel it. A new vulnerability added to a list Albedo watches with a curl of his lip. The room's alarms get around to announcing that a betrayal has happened. Red strobes in a pattern that says, Saboteur. Servo skulls drop from the ceiling like bad fruit with guns attached. Tech Guard raise rifles that have scripture etched into components that will melt if they fire too fast, and no one will care. The Inquisitor moves before breath. The sister moves before thought. Ben flows out of the machine like a river stepping out of its skin and hardens into forearms in the same motion, a wall where bullets think they have a map. Magos Elith, the Inquisitor says, voice as soft as acid. You will kneel. The Magos computes the number of seconds to a likely survival in this decision tree. He kneels. He does not look at the servitors who could kneel if ordered and cannot if not. Ben looks. He looks until the Magos notices and feels a small, unfamiliar tug behind his eyes. Asset 47, the sister says to Medici. Now, the Medici look to the Magos. The Magos looks to the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor looks at Ben because he knows how stories work. And sometimes the right person must say the right word to move a plot in a better direction. Cut him loose, Ben says. The words hit the room like a hammer. That is also a kind thing. The Cathedral of Nullity breathes as if it is a living thing that has been made to exhale. The boy on the altar wakes and cries with his whole face. The sister wraps him in a cloak that smells like burnt hymnals and lavender. The Inquisitor nods once to himself, as if signing his name at the bottom of a document that adds a pound to his soul and saves a life in the margins. Censure, the Inquisitor tells Illith. Seizure of assets. Ordo oversight. The engine is requisitioned. You will testify to the conclave regarding your purchaser. Albedo, Ben says, because saying his name is a ward against the lie that mirrors are nothing but you. Albedo, the Inquisitor echoes. Hunt on sight. They secure what can be secured. They leave what would cost a city to retrieve. They take asset 47 into the cutter and lay him near a blank, because medicine here is heavy with theology. Ben sits by the boy and tells him a story about fireworks that jump from hand to hand and don't burn if you know how to hold them. He leaves out the parts where he nearly lit himself on fire learning warp translation. Claws them as they lift. Alarms try out new notes. The ship buckles like an old horse, startled by thunder. A boarding bell rings, a hollow iron sound that is the same on most human vessels because fear travels well. Contact, the helmsman reports. 2 heretic frigates, spiking and clawing, preparing boarding torpedoes. The sister stands. We meet them in the artery, she says, naming a corridor that carries the ship's blood from heart to arms. The Inquisitor looks at Ben. The boy's grin is small, but real. I have a few friends who like hallways, he says. The first torpedo kisses the hull with a rude knock. Cutting heads bite. Melt charges argue with bulkhead. The artery shudders and opens, bleeding air and men. Magnetic clamps lock down. Grapnels sing. The door of the torpedo is a mouth, and its teeth are men born to lose, and hoping today is not the day. XLR-8 blurs into motion. He slaps the muchness of the boarding party's presence into less all at once. Grab gun, turn man, kick weapon into ceiling magnets. Diamond head sheets a wall, so sisters can fall back in order. Forearms takes a hammer in both hands and makes a noise in a heretic's ribs that his priest would call penance. Stinkfly jets through crossfire with ugly grace and hot spit. He hates this one. He uses it anyway. A man with a collar full of cracked idols laughs into Ben's face and brings a melta charge down. Ghost Freak is a bad idea that saves them by being worse than the hole in the wall. The charge fires into not quite reality and burns itself out in a whimper. Ben drops the form like a hot stone and shakes his hands like the hurt is wet. The Inquisitor fights like a thesis written on bone. The sister fights like prayer that scandalizes the pious. The artery holds. The second torpedo kisses the wrong part of the hull and finds the engine's hum angry. It burns in a way that leaves nothing to confess. The cutter yawns. The helmsman curses like a litany and coaxes the ship to survive schedules it was not built for. The frigates peel off, one limping, one bleeding faith. The void around Lamed 7 settles into the usual noise of exploitation. In the quiet, a small chime. The Omnitrix's new glyph pulses once. The contamination number holds at 30. The Inquisitor's eyes flick to it, and then to Ben's face. He stores the fact and doesn't make a sermon out of it. The sister touches the Aquila-etched rim with the back of her gauntlet. Too gentle to be an accident. Too rough to be an apology. Good work, she says. Ben nods. He doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like a boy with an assignment he doesn't want to fail, because he knows who gets the consequences. Heliodora calls again because you don't save a world once. You save it on the hour. The Cathedral of Ruin left, but it left lures like teeth cut into door frames. Malchior lives on in a rumor, and in a half-scorched Croziest, locked under 7 blessings. Pilgrims rebuild the 1,000 steps with a grief that is competent. Governor Vardane meets them in a council chamber that has 1 new crack and 2 fewer portraits. The Inquisitor stands at her left like a blade in its right sheath. The sister stands at her right like a promise you may regret, but will not stop needing. Ben stands and watches rain slide down a window, as if the world is practicing washing. I was told I owed you thanks and a leash, the governor says with dry humor organized into civility. I prefer the first, am resigned to the second. You removed a shrine engine from a forge world that did not know how to love it properly. You thwarted a boarding that would have removed my tax base. You saved a boy no one would have noticed, except when the numbers didn't balance. So, she lifts a cup. Thank you. Leash? Ben asks. Not bristling. Clarifying. Rules, the Inquisitor says. Duty rosters. Assignments. Pilgrimages. There will be rooms you may not enter. There will be rooms you must. You are Ordo-sanctioned. That means both. The governor nods at Ben's wrist. Your symbol appears on Vox feeds from 3 districts. People are writing it on walls. This is a security problem. The dryness hides fondness badly. It is also a morale problem, which is to say, a blessing. Tread carefully, boy. I always do, Ben says, straight-faced. It gets the chuckle it deserves from a sister who has watched him run into fire twice today. Next, the Inquisitor says, sliding a slate across. It shows a map of a planet split by a river that looks like a scar. Cruentia Secundus. Penal moon. Something woke in the mines. Reports of living metal. Reports of men walking after death. Reports of quiet. He says the last word like a diagnosis. Necrons, the sister says, mouth like a line. The silent tomb. I have hymns for flame. I do not have hymns for that. Ben has no file on Necrons. He has stories about robots that won't stay down. He has upgrade, and that is not a comfort. We will reconnoiter, the Inquisitor says. We will not be fools. We will send a message back to Terra that says we did not die because we were not clever, when cleverness was a kind of courage. Cruentia Secundus is a ball of rock that forgot it had a dayside. Mines web its guts. Prisons stripe its skin. The cutter comes in low and mean, under auspex and above the patience of the men below. The air tastes stale before they open the doors. Silence is a weapon here. No insects. No machines purr. No prayers carry. The blank they bring breathes and the world seems to move away from him in thin, polite inches. They go in with a small team. Sister, Inquisitor. 6 guardsmen, who have asked to have their pay mailed back to towns that won't see it. Ben dials gray matter and rides on a sister's pauldron, like a thought looking for a sentence, while his mind unwraps a map he doesn't want to read. The mine mouths are teeth. The tunnels are throats. The lift cage descends with a shiver that has more to do with nerves than engineering. At depth, the rock gives way to corridors made of not rock. Metal that looks like it decided to be a mineral. Material that decided to be history. They find a chamber storing sleep. Sarcophagi stand like books in a library that doesn't let anyone read. Some are open. They are empty. They are not. Upgrade? The sister whispers. Not because whispering helps, but because normal volume would be a lie. Gray matter shakes his tiny head. Later, he whispers back. We look first. We don't wake extra. And if I go in a Necron, I may not come back the same. The Inquisitor nods once. You learn fast. He does. He watches for patterns. Scratches. Tracks. Missing dust. They find a wake. It goes down. At the bottom of the wake is a chapel that isn't. A script that no human wrote crawls the walls in light that feels like pressure. In the center, on a dais, lies a human in a penal jumpsuit with a hole through his heart. Breathing, metal creeps along his veins like ivy that thinks it is more polite than flesh. The Omnitrix hums a warning chord. Nothing to do with warp. Everything to do with unname of a different sort. Kill, one guardsman asks. Charity hammered into the word because nervousness makes this the mercy it seems. Wait, Ben says, because sometimes the right move is the one you can't defend until after. He dials and becomes Diamond Head in a slow, careful segment of time. He extends a facet to touch the metal without touching the man. The ivy freezes. It tastes him. It tries to decide if he is edible. Diamond Head's lattice holds names well. The ivy doesn't like that. It retreats by 1 centimeter. The man shudders. His breath becomes a choice again. We can pull this out, Ben says, Diamond Head voice like a steel pan drum. Slow. It'll hurt. We do it, the sister says. She sets flame aside and takes up gentler tools, because a soldier's hands can be soft when given a target that asks for that. They work. They hold the man. They peel metal. They pray in 3 ways. 2 with words, 1 with the discipline of steady fingers. The blank stands in the door and the room stays the room. The tomb notices. A ripple passes through the knot rock. A statue becomes a man who isn't. Green eyes like the inside of a lie. He carries a staff built from a piece of night. He looks at the aquila on the boy's watch, and the green circle above it, and if a machine could sneer, that would be what this is. Named Intruder, says the heir in a voice like a coin rolling on a table. Unwelcome. Yeah, Diamondhead says, because sometimes brevity beats theater. He steps forward to occupy attention so the sister can keep peeling salvation out of a ribcage. The Necron's staff isn't a weapon, so much as a function. It cuts the intention out of Diamond. Diamondhead's lattice hisses and smokes. He feels individual plans die in his skin. He shifts to 4 arms because intent cutters like large targets. He offers it 1. The blow lands and moves through him like a thought becoming a bad decision. He digs in. He takes it. He grips the staff with 2 hands and remembers Upgrade's teeth. He can't risk Upgrade. Not here. Not now. If he pours into that alien geometry, he may pour out wrong and become a statue that happens to be alive. He has to fight like a boy with muscles. He does. He levers. He pins. He hears the sister say now, and he tears sideways, hurling the Necron into a column. The guardsmen do what they're for. They fire not to kill, because killing this is not on the menu, but to buy moments and movements. The Inquisitor steps in with a relic blade that thinks thoughts about necrodermis and angles. He carves a question into the Necron's flank and receives an answer that is bloodless and convincing. The blank moves. The air around him dims of significance. The Necron's eyes gutter a fraction, logic engine tasting a hole in the problem set. It is not fear. It is computational delay. It is enough. Switch, the sister calls. And they do. 4 arms to Diamondhead back to 4 arms. Mantle of fast to mantle of hard. Ben learns a new rhythm, not the skater's speed, but the mason's beat. He doesn't win so much as right the room until the Necron chooses to leave the page. It does. It phases. It withdraws down a corridor that did not exist until now. The tomb hums an offended chord. The penal man sobs as the last ivy thread is unwound. His eyes open. He sees his own blood with confusion that will haunt his good hours. Mercy, the Inquisitor says, a word he has not allowed himself to use aloud in days that are more honest than most. Get him out. They carry. They leave with maps in their heads and no extra noise. In orbit, the Cutter's Medicae invents a new protocol by combining 3 old ones with a prayer that machines will accept because it is delivered with enough clean angles. The penal man will live. The Necrons will not forget. Albedo watches a grainy feed from a servo skull that sold its soul for sight and smiles without showing teeth. He traces the aquila under the green circle and writes a script for an audience that will not appreciate the nuance of what he intends. He does not care. He wants Ben to choose a form. He wants Ben to pick a prison and call it a home. The war council that follows is smaller, quieter. A map of the subsector glows over a table. Green and gold dots like LEDs in a model train town. The Inquisitor points with a stylus that is also a knife. 3 fires, he says. Heliodora's rebuilding strain. Lamed 7's seized engine provoking a Mechanicus political fever. Cruentia Secundus's tomb stirring. Pick 2, the governor says over Vox, voice 3 minutes delayed and still sharp. We can't light all candles today. Heliodora holds, the sister says. Abbey reserves are low, but morale is high. The boy's symbol buys us days. I didn't ask for Ben starts and then stops. This is not about asking. Lamed 7 is volatile but contained, the Inquisitor says. Mechanicus infighting kills fewer civilians than Necron awakening. Priests can be dragged before councils. Tombs do not attend. Cruentia secundus, the sister says, sealing it. We guard the door. We pray we guessed right. The next days are classes that don't admit they are classes. The Inquisitor sits Ben with a sister's squad and has them teach him how to fall back in lockstep without breaking anyone else's spine. He sits Ben with a blank and has him learn to do nothing for an hour without going mad. He sits Ben with the confessor and has him listen to stories about men who failed in noble ways and in ordinary ones, and what it cost, and what it saved. Your default is forward, the Inquisitor says in the dark of a transit night. Forward is a good default. You will pick the wrong forward sometimes. Learn to stop. Ben hears Grandpa Max in his head saying something similar about trucks and ditches. He nods. Teach me a prayer, he tells the sister. Not to be pious, but because he needs a sentence that fits in his mouth, in rooms where the warp listen to grammar. She teaches him one that is more muscle memory than words. He practices. It sits wrong on his tongue and then less wrong. He doesn't love it. It does not love him. It will work when he needs it to. They go back down into the tomb, not to win, but to cork. They bring charges, hymns, and a blank with a name. Leda. She is pale, with hair like a river no one visits. She looks at the boy's watch the way a winter looks at a green branch. Surprised, and a little angry to be moved. He learns the arithmetic of proximity. Within 3 meters of Leda, the Omnitrix's face dims. XLR8 lasts 6 seconds instead of 30. Diamond Head's lattice forms with a grind. Heat Blast's flame is less sharp, shapes slovenly, as if the fire is bored. He hates it, and appreciates how it saves him from noticing the wrong things. They lay a chain of melta-bombs on the threshold of a corridor the Necron used. They set charges on structural nodes. Their minds want to call pillars, and their eyes refuse to agree are pillars. The sister chants. Ben does not chant. He counts. The Inquisitor watches and learns the rhythm of a tomb's attention. It comes when they are meant to be gone. It brings a friend. Not a man, but a machine, shaped like a man's idea of inevitability. It slides. Silent. The staff of unintent hums. The blank's presence turns its thirst into a math error. It doesn't stop them. It slows them. It is enough. Ben makes a choice that violates a draft of a rule he wrote on Terra. He uses upgrade in a Necron hall. He tells himself, and it is true, that the bomb chain is 3 breaths from wasted if he does not. He tells himself, and it is true, that he can pull out. Upgrade pours onto the floor and flows up a wall that isn't a wall. He steals the corridor's thinking about corner and gives it a new hobby. The corridor protests in a dialect of geometry. He feels angles gouge him. He absorbs and he names it hurt. He reroutes. He pulls out a second before he believes he can. Now, the Inquisitor barks. The sister presses a rune. The bomb line gives the tomb the gift of absence. The corridor collapses like an apology. Dust doesn't billow. It folds. A green light gutters in a way that makes teeth itch. They climb. They don't run. Running wakes things. They step back into human rock, and human air, and a human sky that is ugly and theirs. The cutter receives them like a mother who will scold later. The Omnitrix shows 38%. Leda stands 3 meters away until it says 36. The Inquisitor nods, counting along with his eyes. Good, he says, which is not praise and is not praise. They don't make Terra again yet. The galaxy insists. A distress call from a pilgrim flotilla pings across a route Ben now knows like a school hallway. A Mechanicus envoy that was on its way to argue about ownership of the shrine engine runs silent for 7 minutes, and then screams. The Inquisitor picks in a way that proves why he has the hat. The flotilla is 7 ships and a sin. Pirates run with flagged chaos fealty. Not because they believe, but because this paint buys protection. They have grapnels and laughs. They have bad teeth and worse gods. They have hostages whose prayers are not yet answered. Rules, the Inquisitor says over the Bayvox, to the boy and to the sisters and to his own jaw. Minimize loss of non-combatant life. Deprive the enemy of maneuver. Do not, he stops looking at Ben and looks at everyone. Do not set a precedent we cannot defend. Board or break, a sister asks. Board, Ben says without waiting. We take their knives away. We give their prisoners a corridor. They do. The cutter spears for the pirate carrier's spine. Grapnels bite both ways. The artery fills with noise. Ben learns a new trick. Upgrade into a door to let the good through and keep the bad out. Then peel off into forearms to teach a man how to sleep at speed. He is efficient, which is the form mercy takes when there's no time for speeches. He catches himself about to kill a man who is about to light a charge near a crate with 20 civilians inside. He does not kill him. He breaks both arms and puts a label on the pain called later. The man will breathe. He will curse. He will live long enough to make choices. The Inquisitor is near and watches the decision happen and the man fall. He nods to himself in a way that means one of his fears has had a number lowered. Albedo is not here. His shadow is. A rumor of a form behind a bulkhead that makes a sister miss her stroke by a hair. He leaves a gift. A grenade that isn't. An Ultimatrix blossom that chews a square meter of air into a null where names skid. The Omnitrix hiccups and resets an interface quietly. The Aquila glyph pulses. Steadying, Ben picks it up without touching it by being diamond head for a finger. He feels the shape of the trap in the metal. He thinks about Albedo writing it, and not considering a 10-year-old's stubbornness a variable. He pockets the lesson and gives the grenade to the Inquisitor, who has a box for such things labeled later and never. They save most of the pilgrims. Not all. There are 22 who die on a deck that saw its best day before they were born. Stakes list names. The confessor writes them on a card and lets a sister burn the card on an altar he made from a crate. Ben stands and doesn't speak. He could have moved faster. He could have chosen differently. He could have. He didn't. He will tomorrow. He breathes. The conclave calls and must be obeyed. Terra is 3 steps away by routes that take 9. The cutter makes 1, a relay with a choir, a detour around a storm, where warp mathematicians have made officious recommendations, a penance in the void, where the stars are scars. They dock. They file. They stand in a room without windows, where men in hats weigh what is true by how it tastes to old tongues. The Inquisitor speaks first. He is concise. He is unkind to Elith. He is measured in praise. He says the boy more than he says Ben, because what matters is the office, not the name. He says mercy was actionable once, in a tone that makes 2 men frown in 2 very different ways. Ben speaks without being told because he is still not entirely of this machine. He lays down the shape of what happened with the shrine engine in terms a tech priest can challenge and a confessor can bless. He says, I chose to go inside. He says, I will not do that in a Necron tomb again unless the world's slope is wrong and I am the only sandbag handy. He says, we saved a boy. He says, we did not save everyone. He does not apologize for not being infinite. He does not crow. The sister speaks when asked and speaks only to facts that are hands and not clouds. She says, he took hits meant for me. She says, he obeyed fallback orders twice and disobeyed once correctly. She says, I would take him with me into a furnace. Imago speaks for Lamed 7 and makes a noise that is like prayer and like counting coins. He does not thank anyone. He does not curse. He requests the shrine engine be returned. He is told no. He calls the word no by a longer name. He sits. The conclave murmurs. The boy with the watch feels judgment pass over him like a flashlight's beam over a winter yard. It picks out a thing here and there. It leaves shadows where it can't be bothered. One man smiles without showing teeth. One woman prays. One thinks about Albedo and the price of a mirror. The Emperor says nothing here. He has already spoken. His silence is part of the shape of the permission. Ben leaves with the Inquisitor and the sister. The corridor outside the conclave chamber is long and has statues of men who made bigger mistakes more elegantly. He looks at them, then away. He doesn't want to learn that much elegance. The Inquisitor coughs. Acceptable, he says, which is a victory condition in this house. We have flexibility. I was prepared to fight for it. I may yet. Ben flexes his hand. The watch hums back like a hive. He looks at the tiny Aquila nested under the green circle and decides again not to hate it. Albedo will push harder, the sister says. Too simply to be dramatic. He will, the Inquisitor agrees. He will build something that takes our new sigil into account. We will break it. He will learn. We will learn. One day he will die. Or we will. Do not plan your prayers around the first. Plan your days around the second. Ben hears Grandpa Max again, from a world that is both a universe away and 2 inches to the left. He nods. The next call is not a call. It is a rumor carried on a Vox channel that shouldn't reach them, and does. A saint's bones weeping oil on a moon that does not know if it is holy or just wet. An orc, wah! Sniffing around a green flare like a dog at a cook fire. An Eldar Farseer, no, an Ildari afterward, saying a word into a somebody else's dream that sounds like boy, but in a tone that makes it older than stars. They go because the river of necessity bends them there, and because some choices are chosen for you by schedules, and some by who you promise to be at 10. The Inquisitor writes 3 orders that will get him reprimanded if read unkindly, and praised if read with the right set of eyes. The sister packs extra hymnals and rations without noticing she did. Ben checks the watch. The contamination number holds at 32. He thinks he can be careful enough and still be himself. The moon is called Saint's Cowl. It is brown rock and green rumor. Pilgrims have made a town of flags and mud. Oil does weep from a reliquary. Orcs are coming like weather that laughs. Eldari skeins shiver in the air like cobwebs the size of counties. The sister's eyes narrow. The Inquisitor's hand hovers near his pistol, not because he plans to shoot an elf, but because his habits are not subject to cosmetic editing. Ben breathes. He dials. He starts with 4 arms because tents need raising, barricades need placing, pilgrims need moving, and hope likes concrete proofs. He learns orc humor up close. He learns it is very simple and dangerous because of that. He learns Eldari sarcasm from a woman with a helmet that looks like a sculpture of a headache and a voice like a harp deciding to be mean. He saves the shepherd who won't leave his goats. He picks up a goat and carries it. Weird, the shepherd says, and then sheepishly thanks him. The orcs arrive singing a song about teeth. They are green thunder in boots. They have a truck with spikes that are definitely a decision. They have a boss whose armor is made of the sins of 8 mechanics. Ben fights them like he fights a storm with sandbags. XLR-8 to catch a thrown bomb before it can discover kids. Heat blast to weld a gate shut around fleeing pilgrims. Diamond Head to turn a roundabout into a hedgehog of pain. 4 arms to pick up a knob and put him down elsewhere as a suggestion. He does not savor it. It is half comedy and half the opposite. He takes 2 hits he will feel when he is 60 if he gets that far. The Eldari woman, the Farseer, fights beside the sister once, just long enough to make a poem out of a joint decision, and then peel away before anyone can accuse anyone of liking it. She names him in her tongue, a sibilant spiderweb that tries to wrap around the concept, boy with many true names, and mostly fails, because it needs a word for stubbornness that considers mercy a form of warfare. Your doom is one of 3, she says in passing, conversationally, cutting an orc down without looking. You must pick the one that leaves the least stain. Working on it, he pants. She smiles with one eye and disappears. The orcs leave when bored, which is often and always late. The moon breathes out. The oil stops weeping as if the saint decided to nap. The pilgrims build a shrine to a green circle with a tiny aquila under it, next to the saint's old one. The Inquisitor pretends not to see. The sister does not pretend, and doesn't know if she should scold or smile. Albedo watches from a ridge with a scope made from gilt and glass. He hears the word saint and laughs. He writes an equation that will make the word wrong somewhere and stands to leave. He steps into a gate that eats his shadow and burps. In the cutter, Ben looks at the watch one more time. He says his rough prayer. He thinks about Bellwood and Heliodora and tombs and empty churches that you put your own voice in and they fill. He thinks about the Emperor's 3 paths and the one he took, and the way choices grow barnacles of other choices. He breathes. Next, the Inquisitor says. Next, the sister confirms. Next, Ben echoes. Not brave, because bravery is a story you tell afterward. He is obedient to a rule he wrote for himself. Go where they need you, and be the you that does not break to fit. The camera pulls back again. The galaxy does not change its mind. The boy with the watch does not change his rules. 2 vectors intersect. The line that results is not straight. It is long. It glows. Across a dozen sectors, his symbol spreads, illicit in some precincts, encouraged in others, tolerated where it is useful. A child in a schola scratches it on a desk and is caned, and does not mind because it looked right. A pilot in a battered gun cutter paints it under her cockpit and calls it the thing you touch before you do a hard thing. A sister sews it, small, inside a sleeve where no one will see it unless she dies, and someone must decide where to send the tunic. Albedo writes a counter-sigil that looks like a circle with knives and sells it to a man who doesn't know what it costs. The Dark Apostle Malchior wakes once in a cell and says a name he refuses to admit is a prayer. The Necron Lord reviews a record and assigns a subroutine to this anomaly, called Ben. The Magos Elith attends a trial and decides whether to die well or badly. The Governor Vardane pours herself a drink and writes a policy the way other people write letters to old friends. Somewhere, deep core of a ruined world, a demon studies a new color, green over gold. It tilts its head. It decides to learn that song. Somewhere else, an Eldar laughs and says a word for child that can also mean knife we will hand carefully across a chasm. Ben sleeps when he can, which is almost never when he wants. In his sleep, the Omnitrix's face reflects starlight that isn't there. The aquila under the green circle is very small and very stubborn. It does not blink. He wakes. He smiles. He will keep trying to make the blinks be lights, and the lights be clearer than the machines that want to eat them. He sits up. Okay, he says into a dark that is only a room and not the enemy. Let's go.